I'm sure you must have heard of Squid Game, that Korean TV series on Netflix that everyone's been talking about. But did you know that there really are hundreds of debt-ridden people who would willingly play life-threatening games for money? Yes, you heard that right. But not only are there hundreds of people who would risk their lives to pay off their debts, millions of South Koreans are in need of financial aid. Before we dive into this mess, this video will have a few spoilers, so if you plan on watching Squid Game, you can skip past the parts that say "Spoiler Alert." Now, let's continue, shall we? Squid Game's popularity. This thriller TV series became so popular that it was on the top 10 of Netflix and greatly increased Korea's business in the entertainment sector so much that it's nearly worth $900 million. Through its popularity, it might have raised Korea's economy by a few because they also greatly rely on tourism or entertainment to raise money. Squid Game is influenced by South Korea's actual economic state. How is Squid Game based on South Korea's real economy? There's a few things you ought to know about South Korea, and one of them is that not everyone there lives comfortable, financially stable lives like you see on TV. A great number of them suffer from crippling debt and are barely making a living, especially with the pandemic. South Korea's debt. How bad is Korea's debt? Korea's debt is so bad that more than 4 million people were forced to take loans or borrow money, even more so with the pandemic. Elderly Koreans can't even afford to buy their daily needs, and most of them live in poverty. Remember when Gi-hun's mother was diagnosed with diabetes? They were so poor that they couldn't even afford to get medical treatment at a hospital, and their house wasn't in great shape either. Sang-woo's mother was just a vendor on the street, but he gambled away all of his savings and now he has billions of debt. He couldn't afford to give his mother a better life, so she could stop selling on the streets. The coronavirus pandemic has worsened the state of jobless Koreans. With living costs rising and the chance of getting sick just around the corner, it's not hard to immediately lose all of your savings and fall into debt. This has resulted in a rise in Korea's suicide rate. The average suicide rate has risen from 2018 to 32.5% for every 100,000 deaths. People are so in debt that they decided to take their own lives rather than just live in misery because no matter what they do, they can't pay it off. 7th country with the highest household debt in the world. Housing prices in South Korea have risen over 70% in a span of 5 years, placing it in 7th place for highest household debt. It's getting harder and harder for Koreans to keep a house or pay rent with the increasing costs of living. The household debt in South Korea is so high that it has reached over $1.5 trillion. Yes, that's in dollars. South Korea is the 2nd country with the highest household debt in the world. Koreans are investing in cryptocurrency to pay off debts. The Koreans are desperate to pay off their debts, so they have started investing in cryptocurrency. They are hoping that they can earn money from their investments, but because most of these people are inexperienced and don't know what they're doing, it is worsening the situation. Though Korea was the 3rd largest crypto market in the world back in 2017, there are still a lot of people who don't know how cryptocurrency works and are blindly investing in it because of desperation. People are losing money from their investments, and this is leading to more debt. This also drastically increases their living costs, making it harder to buy their daily needs or stay out of poverty. How are Squid Game and South Korea similar? Now that we know about South Korea's economy, let's talk about its resemblance with the economy in Squid Game. Everyone is debt-ridden in the show. All 456 players in Squid Game are suffering from crippling debt and are desperate for money. They are willing to risk their lives and die just so they could pay off their debts. Spoiler alert! Well, everyone aside from player 001, he wasn't even in debt. He was quite the opposite actually, and yet he still played. Lost, but didn't get shot because it was his own game. Give me back my tears. End of spoiler. Just like in real life, there are probably thousands of people out there willing to risk their lives to pay off their debts. Some of them are even willing to sell their organs to gangs for money. Gi-hun and Sang-woo's mothers. Their mothers both live in poverty and they're both just vendors on the street. They were so poor that Gi-hun's mother couldn't even afford to go to the hospital for her diabetes. Spoiler alert! Because his mother refused to go to the hospital, she died from her illness. Gi-hun stopped paying for medical insurance, so she had no choice but to suffer until her death. End of spoiler. More than 40% of the elderly in South Korea live in poverty. These people can't even afford to pay for insurance, medical treatment, or daily needs. Gi-hun's and Sang-woo's mothers live in the same situation, which reflects on South Korea's inability to support their own elderly citizens. Gi-hun's financial state. Just like many people in South Korea, Gi-hun has so much debt that he can't even afford to pay for his daughter's child support. He was so desperate to get money for his mother's diabetes treatment that he even tried to ask for financial aid from his divorced wife. This reflects how debt-ridden South Koreans would do anything to get funds for their debts. South Korea's debts are real and are a serious problem. Millions of people are drowning in debt. Millions of people are taking their own lives, and millions of people are desperate for money. The suicide rate is rising, the living costs are rising, and the debts are rising. South Korea is not the only one facing these problems. Countries all around the world have the same financial state, and I'm sure that many of them are also willing to risk their lives and fight for financial freedom.